Hey everyone, hope you're doing great. Welcome back to my channel. In today's video, we'll dive into what if Deku became the guardian of the first flame. Smash that subscribe button, and be sure to peek at the description below. Let's begin. The end of the world did not sound like a bang. It did not sound like a scream. It sounded like the tearing of wet paper, magnified by 1,000,000,000 decibels until the sound itself ceased to be auditory and became a vibration that rattled the teeth in Izuku Midoriya's skull. Smash! The word was less a battle cry and more a prayer, ripped from a throat raw with smoke and blood. Izuku's right arm, encased in the jagged, shifting crimson gauntlet of his gamma suit, collided with Tamura Shigaraki's chest. At the point of impact, the laws of physics seemed to hold their breath. Around them, the floating tomb of Uaihai was disintegrating. The sky over Japan was a bruised cocktail of indigo and black, choked by the swirling vortex of clouds summoned by the sheer atmospheric pressure of their conflict. Shigaraki, his body a grotesque tapestry of fingers and adapting flesh, grinned. It was a rictus of pure malice, eyes manic and filled with the bottomless hunger of all for one. "It's useless, Izuku Midoriya!" Shigaraki roared, his voice overlapping with the distorted baritone of his master. The decay quirk rippled out from his skin, a tide of grey death eating away at the golden sparks of one for all. "The world is an itch. I am the scratching. You cannot save a thing that wants to die. I won't let you!" Izuku screamed back. He didn't just push, he poured. He opened the floodgates in the deepest basement of his soul. He pulled on the glowing thread of the first user, the kinetic stored energy of the second, the raw power of the third, fourth, fifth, sixth, seventh, and the burning embers of all might. One for all, 100%. Plus ultra. The energy wreathing Izuku turned from a lightning storm into a solid pillar of blinding light. The air pressure dropped so sharply that rain instantly condensed and vaporized in the heat. Shigaraki's hand met the blow. Decay met stockpile. Infinite destruction against infinite accumulation. The singularity occurred in the space between their knuckles. A tiny black sphere, no larger than a marble, collapsed in on itself. It was a rejection of reality. The sheer density of quirk factors colliding, power that bent space and decay that rotted concept, created a paradox. The sound died. The color drained from the world, turning the battlefield into a monochromatic sketch. Inside Izuku's mind, the vestiges screamed, "Ninth! Let go!" Nana Shimura's voice was frantic, echoing in the void. "The causality is fracturing. Hold on!" Yoichi, the first user, cut through the static. "The flow, it's not going outward. It's pulling him in." Izuku couldn't let go. He couldn't pull back. If he stopped now, Shigaraki would touch the ground, and Japan would turn to dust. He shoved harder, tears streaming horizontally from his eyes due to the G-force. "Go!" The black marble expanded. It didn't explode, it swallowed. First, it took Shigaraki's arm. The villain's eyes widened, the arrogance replaced by confused horror as his limb was simply deleted from existence, not decayed, but displaced. Then, it took the light. Then, it took Izuku. The sensation was not like pain. Pain was a biological signal, a message from nerves to the brain. This was the unmaking of the delivery system. Izuku felt his body stretched like taffy, pulled through the eye of a needle. He saw memories that weren't his, a man with a lightning bolt fighting a dragon, a city of gold sinking into a swamp, a lonely king burning in a kiln. He felt the vestiges cling to his soul like anchors in a hurricane. Danger sense went silent. Black Whip went limp. Float lost its buoyancy. The roaring wind of the MHA universe vanished. And then, gravity returned with the weight of a mountain. Thud. Izuku hit the ground. He didn't roll. He simply impacted, burying himself 2 feet deep into something soft, dry, and powdery. For a long time, he didn't move. He lay face down, his lungs seizing as they tried to remember how to draw breath. His body felt incredibly heavy, his limbs leaden. The adrenaline that had been fueling him during the war was crashing, leaving behind an exhaustion so profound it felt like his bones had been replaced with iron rods. "I'm alive," he thought, the realization coming slowly. "I can feel my fingers." He flexed his right hand. It throbbed with a dull, biting ache, but it wasn't broken. The support gear on his forearm whirred weakly, a dying mechanical groan. Shiga, Riki. He wheezed, forcing himself to push up. His hands sank into the ground. He frowned. It wasn't dirt. It wasn't concrete. It was gray, fine, and coated his gloves in a thick film. Ash. Izuku coughed, spitting out grit. He leveraged himself up to his knees, his vision swimming. His mask was torn, hanging off one ear. He ripped it off and wiped his eyes. Is everyone? His voice died in his throat. He was not in Jaka City. He was not at UA. He wasn't even in Japan. Izuku stood on the edge of a dune, made entirely of gray ash. It stretched out in every direction, rising and falling like the waves of a dead ocean. But it was the sky that made his blood run cold. There was no sun. Or rather, the sun was dying. Hanging low in the sky was a pale, white orb, bleeding a sickly orange light around its edges, as if it were cauterizing a wound in the heavens. A dark ring encircled it, an eclipse that looked less like a celestial event and more like a hole in the universe. The light it cast was muted, washing the world in sepia and gray. Where? Izuku whispered, clutching his chest. Where is this? He spun around, looking for landmarks. In the distance, impossible structures jutted out of the ash. He saw the spire of a Gothic cathedral leaning at a 45-degree angle, smashed into the side of a massive, earthen windmill. He saw castles that looked like they had been melted and fused together, drifting in a void of fog. It was as if the world had been put into a trash compactor, crushing epochs and kingdoms into a single, twisted pile. The dreg heap, a thought whispered in his mind. It wasn't his thought. It felt ancient. First, Izuku mentally reached out. Nana? Are you there? Silence. Usually, the realm of One for All was a constant hum in the back of his head, a chorus of 7 other voices. Now it was quiet. Not empty, but muffled. Like they were underwater. Inth. Ninth. The voice was faint, crackling like a radio with bad reception. First. Izuku spoke aloud. I can hear you. What happened? Where is Shigaraki? Stable, reality, unstable. Yoichi's voice faded in and out. The power. One for all, it's heavy here. So heavy. Be careful. The connection grew dormant again. Izuku gritted his teeth. He was alone. He checked his surroundings again. He was in a crater of sorts. The only path forward led up a steep incline of ash toward a colossal, bowl-like structure made of twisted rock and calcified tree roots. It looked like a kiln, vast enough to hold a city block. Inside that structure, he saw a faint flicker. A light. Civilization? Izuku analyzed rapidly. If there's a fire, there might be people. If there are people, I can find a phone, or a map. He took a step. His boot crunched loudly. The silence here was oppressive. There were no birds, no cars, no wind. Just the sound of his own breathing and the shifting ash. The air smelled of sulfur, old iron, and something that reminded him of the cremation scenery Shoto had once described, burning bone. He activated full cowl instinctively, aiming for a low 5%. Green lightning crackled around his body. Crack boom. The ash around him exploded outward as if a grenade had gone off. Izuku was thrown backward, tumbling down the dune. Whoa! He dug his fingers into the gray silt to stop his slide. He stared at his hands. The green sparks were wild, arcing aggressively, thicker and more volatile than usual. My control, it's off, he realized, sweat beading on his forehead. The atmosphere, there's something in the air. It's dense. It's conducting the energy differently. In his world, quirks were biological functions. Here, the air itself felt saturated with a strange energy. Using One for All here felt less like running a current through a wire and more like pouring gasoline onto an open flame. Okay. No full call unless necessary, he muttered to himself, falling into his habit of analysis to stave off the panic. Physical abilities only. Conservation of stamina is priority until I identify a water source. He began the trek up the ash dune again, relying on the raw, stockpiled strength of his muscles. Even without the active quirk, Izuku was strong enough to lift steel beams. But walking here was exhausting. The ash sucked at his feet, dragging him down. It felt like the world was trying to bury him. As he crested the ridge, the massive structure, the kiln, loomed ahead. It was a tragic piece of architecture, columns twisting like agonizing limbs, and standing before the entrance, blocked by a landslide of rubble, was a figure. Izuku froze, crouching low behind a stone pillar. A villain? A local? The figure was clad in armor, plate mail that looked blackened and scorched. It held a great shield in one hand and a heavy sword in the other. It wasn't moving. It stood facing the kiln, head bowed. "Hello?" Izuku called out, standing up slowly, hands raised. I'm lost. Can you help me?" The figure's head snapped up. There was no face inside the helm. Just a dark void where eyes should be. It let out a sound, a dry, rasping hiss that sounded like air escaping a tomb. Hollow. Without warning, the knight lunged. It moved with jerky, unnatural speed, swinging the heavy sword in a horizontal arc. Whoa! Izuku ducked, the blade passing inches over his messy green hair. The wind pressure of the swing cut a furrow in the ash behind him. Fast, Izuku thought. And strong. Is this a strength enhancement quirk? Wait. I don't want to fight. Izuku yelled, backflipping away. I'm a hero. I just want to know where I am. The knight didn't speak. It roared, a sound of pure misery, and charged again, raising the shield to bash him. Izuku's eyes narrowed. Danger sense gave a dull throb, a headache behind his eyes. He's not stopping. There's no reason in his stance. Just aggression. The shield came down. Izuku sidestepped, the heavy metal smashing into the ground with enough force to crack the stone beneath the ash. I have to restrain him. Black whip! Izuku commanded. The black tendrils burst from his shoulders. But like the lightning, they were different. In Japan, they were distinct ropes of energy. Here they were smoky, viscous, like tendrils of darkness leaking from a wound. They lashed out, wrapping around the knight's arms and torso. The knight struggled, thrashing with surprising power. Stop moving! Izuku shouted, planting his feet and pulling back. I don't want to hurt you. The knight's struggles intensified. It dropped its sword and clawed at the black energy, growling like a wild animal. Then, unexpectedly, the knight's body began to glow. A dark, reddish aura flared around it. He's powering up? The knight simply exploded with force, shattering the black whip tendrils. The backlash sent Izuku skidding. The energy broke my whips? No, it dissolved them. The knight charged, drawing a dagger from its belt. It leaped, aiming for Izuku's throat. Izuku had no choice. He stepped into the guard. He didn't use one for all. He used the martial arts he'd learned from Gunhead and Endeavor. He caught the knight's wrist, pivoted, and used the knight's own momentum to slam him into the ground. Slam. The armor crunched. The knight went limp for a second, then began to writhe, trying to bite Izuku's leg. He's lost his mind, Izuku whispered, horror dawning on him. He looked into the visor again. He saw skin that looked like beef jerky, shriveled and gray. This isn't a villain. This person is sick. He couldn't kill him. But he couldn't leave him like this. Izuku ripped a length of capture tape from his utility belt, miraculously still intact, and bound the knight's hands and feet, tying him securely to a broken pillar. The knight screamed and hissed, thrashing against the bindings, but he was immobilized. Izuku backed away, breathing hard. He looked at his hands. They were shaking. What is wrong with this place? He asked the silent, bleeding sun. The trek into the kiln took what felt like hours. The geography was nonsensical. Gravity seemed to shift. At one point, Izuku walked sideways along a falling tower to cross a chasm of light. Finally, he reached the center. It was an arena of white flowers. Spectral, ghostly lilies that bloomed from the ash, glowing with a faint luminescence. They surrounded a bonfire, but this wasn't a normal campfire. A coiled sword was thrust into the ground, and around it, the embers were barely glowing. It looked like a fire that was seconds away from going out forever. Sitting before the fire was a figure. Izuku stopped at the edge of the flower field. This figure was different from the knight. It was massive, easily equaling All Might in height. It wore armor that looked like twisted, charred metal, fused with ribs and bone. It sat cross-legged, A massive, spiraling greatsword resting on its knees. It wasn't moving. It looked like a statue erected to commemorate a forgotten war, the Soul of Cinder. Izuku didn't know the name, but he felt the pressure. It rolled off the figure in waves. It felt like facing All for One, but without the malice. There was no evil here. Just weight. The weight of history, the weight of duty. Excuse me? Izuku called out, his voice trembling slightly. The figure did not move. It did not breathe. Izuku crept closer, stepping through the spectral flowers. They dissolved into light as his boots brushed them. He reached the bonfire. The heat was negligible. It was cold here. Hello? Izuku waved a hand in front of the giant's helmet. Nothing. Is it dead? Izuku whispered. He looked at the coiled sword in the fire. He felt a strange pull toward it. A desire to touch it. To feed it. Don't touch it, his instincts screamed. Welcome, a soft voice spoke from behind him. Izuku jumped, spinning around and raising his fists. Who's there? He hadn't heard footsteps. Nothing snuck up on him. Standing among the flowers was a woman. She wore black robes with elaborate silver embroidery, and a silver mask covered her eyes. Her hair was platinum blonde, falling loosely over her shoulders. Her hands were clasped politely in front of her. She didn't look like a warrior. She looked like a mourner. Peace, Ashen One, she said. Her voice was melodious but devoid of inflection. Or are you Ash? She tilted her head, the silver mask reflecting the dying light of the eclipse. I'm Izuku Midoriya, he stammered, dropping his guards slightly. She seemed unarmed. I'm a hero from far away. I don't know how I got here. A hero, she tasted the word. We have had many heroes. They all come to the kiln in the end. She took a step forward. I am the fire keeper. I tend to the flame, and to those who seek it. The flame? Izuku pointed to the dying embers. This fire? It looks like it's going out. It is, the fire keeper said simply. The fire fades, and the lords go without thrones. The world awaits the end. Izuku looked around at the twisted ruins in the sky. The end? Is that why everything looks like this? Because a fire is going out. Fire is life, she explained, as if teaching a child. Fire is time. Fire is the disparity between light and dark. Without the first flame, everything returns to the gray. To the dark. She stepped closer to him. Izuku stiffened, but he didn't retreat. She reached out a gloved hand, hovering it over his chest. But you... She paused. Her mouth opened slightly in surprise. You are not empty. What? Unkind led our vessels for souls. They are empty, seeking embers to fill the void, she murmured. But you are full. Overflowing. She sensed it. One for all. The power cultivated for generations. The stockpiled strength of 8 heroes, grown into a singularity. Inside you, she whispered, is a roaring sun. Izuku clutched his chest. This is my power. My quirk. Quirk, she repeated. A strange sorcery. But it burns. It burns so brightly. She lowered her hand. Why have you come to the kiln of the first flame, if not to link it? Link it? Izuku asked. I don't know what that means. I just want to go home. My friends are fighting a war right now. I need to get back to Japan. The fire keeper turned her head toward the giant, silent figure by the fire. There is no Japan, she said gently. There is only Lothric. Drangliic. Lord Ran. The lands have converged. Time is stagnant. No, that's not possible, Izuku denied, panic rising in his throat. I was just there. I was fighting Shigaraki. The flow of time is convoluted, she said. You may have come from a time before, or a world beyond the fog. But once you are here, you are part of the cycle. She gestured to the dormant giant. That is the soul of Cinder. The manifestation of all those who have linked the fire before. Lord Gwyn. The chosen undead. The bearer of the curse. They burn themselves to keep the world alive. Izuku looked at the giant. They burn themselves to save the world? That concept resonated with him. Self-sacrifice. It was the core of being a hero. This giant, is he alive? He is a husk, the keeper said. He waits for a challenger. He waits for someone strong enough to prove they are worthy to burn. To burn, Izuku repeated. You mean die? To extend the age of fire is to sacrifice one's soul as fuel, she said. It is a terrible fate. But it holds back the dark. Izuku looked at the eclipse. He looked at the ash. He thought about the hollow soldier he had tied up, the madness in his eyes. If the fire goes out, everyone becomes like that night I saw. Hollow? Yes, she said. Without fire, humanity loses its way. The curse of the undead takes all. Izuku's fists clenched. So, to save everyone, someone has to die. That is the way of this world. That's wrong, Izuku said, his voice firm. The fire keeper paused. Wrong? A world where someone has to be sacrificed just to keep existing. That's not right. Izuku shouted. That's what I've been fighting against. A society that ignores the crying person to maintain peace. If the only way to save this world is to throw someone into a fire, then the system is broken. The fire keeper stood motionless. A faint breeze stirred her robes. You speak like a lord, she said softly. Or perhaps, a usurper. Suddenly, the ground shook. The ash around the perimeter of the arena exploded. A dark, viscous sludge erupted from the ground, coagulating into a massive shape. Izuku spun around. Danger sense shrieked in his skull, a piercing wail that dropped him to one knee. Gah! Be wary, the fire keeper said, her voice losing its calm for the first time. The abyss stirs. From the sludge, a figure rose. It wasn't a hollow. It wasn't a knight. It was a mass of hands. Izuku's blood froze. Standing in a pool of black darkness, rising from the deep, was a figure wearing tattered remains of a suit. White hair floated in the anti-gravity of the abyss. Izuku. The figure rasped. It wasn't Shigaraki's voice. It was distorted, layered with the sound of drowning ghosts. You! Izuku stood up, green sparks flickering dangerously around him. Shigaraki? The figure turned. Its face was half covered by a hand, but the visible eye was pitch black with a red pupil. This place. Shigaraki looked at his own hands. Decay spread from his fingertips, turning the white spectral flowers into gray sludge. It's perfect. Shigaraki looked up at the bleeding sun. He took a deep breath, inhaling the rot. No heroes, Shigaraki laughed. It was a dry, hacking sound. No all might. No society. Just ruin. He looked at Izuku. We're in the trash heap, hero. Finally. A world that understands me. Black tentacles erupted from Shigaraki's back. But they weren't the rivets of the all-for-one quirk. They were made of humanity. Screaming, dark spirits stretching out. Shigaraki! Izuku yelled. We have to stop. We're not in our world anymore. We have to work together too. Work together? Shigaraki tilted his head. Why would I want to leave? This world is dying, Izuku. Can't you feel it? It wants to rest. It wants to close its eyes. He pointed a finger at the first flame. That fire, it's annoying. It hurts my eyes. Shigaraki stepped forward. The ash turned to black corruption beneath his feet. I think I'll put it out. No! The fire keeper stepped back. I won't let you! Izuku stepped between Shigaraki and the flame. Get out of my way, hero, Shigaraki growled. Or I'll turn you to ash like everything else. Izuku took a stance. He pulled his mask up, though it was torn. He felt the connection to One for All sputter, then stabilize. The vestiges were quiet, but the power was there. The stockpile was full. This wasn't Japan. There were no cameras. No civilians to evacuate. Just two forces of nature in a dying world. Firekeeper, Izuku said, his voice low. Get back. The firekeeper hesitated, then retreated toward the bonfire. Izuku looked at Shigaraki. He looked at the massive, dormant soul of cinder, which seemed to be watching them through the slit of its helm. If you want to touch that fire, Izuku said, green lightning exploding around him, shattering the silence of the kiln. You have to go through me. Shigaraki grinned. The abyss surged behind him, a tidal wave of darkness. Gladly, the clash between One for All and the abyss was not a battle. It was a rejection. When Izuku Midoriya's fist, wreathed in the rainbow spectrum of his stockpiled power, met the encroaching tide of Tamura Shigaraki's darkness, the world did not simply break. It convulsed. The kiln of the first flame, a place that existed outside the normal flow of time, groaned under the weight of two alien concepts forcing their way into its dying logic. Smash! Izuku screamed, the sound tearing at his throat. Rot! Shigaraki shrieked back, his laughter bubbling through the black sludge. The resulting shockwave was silent. It was a sphere of pure force that expanded outward, ripping the ash from the ground and atomizing the spectral flowers. The soul of Cinder, the ancient guardian sitting by the fire, merely watched, its helm unmoving, as if it had seen eons of struggles and found this one merely loud. But the kiln was unstable. It was a dimension stitched together by the fading will of dead gods. It could not sustain the presence of two living singularities. The ground beneath them fractured. Not into rocks, but into geometry. The floor dissolved into cubes of light and shadow. No! Izuku gasped as gravity inverted. He felt himself falling upward. Shigaraki was dragged downward, the abyss clinging to his ankles like tar. This isn't over, hero. This world is a grave, and I'm going to fill it. Fire Keeper! Izuku yelled, ignoring the villain. He twisted in midair, Black Whip firing blindly. The black tendrils, usually so obedient, felt sluggish here, heavy with the atmospheric pressure of this strange dimension. But one lash found purchase. It wrapped around the slender waist of the Firekeeper just as the ground beneath her crumbled into a void of gray fog. I've got you! Izuku pulled. He activated float, but the quirk sputtered. The air here had no buoyancy. It was thin, dead static. He couldn't fly. He could only drift. With a violent lurch, the spatial tears swallowed them. The image of Shigaraki sinking into the dark and the soul of Cinder fading into the embers vanished. Then came the sensation of being pulled through a straw, followed by the hard, unforgiving impact of stone. The dreg heap. Izuku woke up to the sound of wind. It was a lonely, hollow sound, whistling through jagged rocks. He pushed himself up, his body aching in places he didn't know existed. His gamma suit was tattered, the iron soles of his boots scraped and dented. He blinked, trying to clear the static from his vision. Are you unhurt, Ashen One? The voice was soft, unbothered. Izuku turned to see the Firekeeper standing a few feet away. She was brushing gray dust from her black robes with the casual demeanor of someone who had merely tripped, not fallen through a hole in reality. I'm okay, Izuku wheezed. He checked his arms. No broken bones. The durability of One for All was working overtime to keep him knit together. Where are we now? Is this still the kiln? He looked up, and his breath hitched. They were standing on a precipice, a jagged outcropping of stone jutting out over a drop that seemed infinite. Below them lay a landscape that defied every law of architecture and physics Izuku had ever studied. It was a junkyard of civilizations. Massive Gothic castles were smashed sideways into the earth. Towers spiraled horizontally into the fog. An enormous, rusted windmill lay crushed beneath the weight of a silver cathedral. It looked as though a giant child had taken the toys of 1,000 different cities, mashed them together into a ball, and thrown them into a pit. This isn't right, Izuku muttered, his eyes darting frantically, analyzing the structural integrity of those buildings. The load-bearing walls are at 90-degree angles to the ground, yet they aren't collapsing. The fog below, is that an ocean? No, it's too dense. The dreg heap, the Firekeeper said, walking to the edge. Her blind mask stared out at the ruin. At the close of the Age of Fire, all lands meet at the end of the earth. Great kingdoms, high walls, grand archives, they all drift here, to rot together. The end of the earth, Izuku repeated. He scrambled to his feet, panic rising in his chest like bile. We have to get out of here. We have to find a way back to the surface, or wherever the exit is. He tapped the side of his head. Danger sense? Are you there? A dull throb. It was like a migraine that wouldn't go away, a constant warning that everything here was wrong. First? Nana? He tried to project his thoughts into the vestige realm. Static. A faint image of Yoichi Shigaraki appeared in his mind, but he looked like a glitched hologram. Ninth, the walls, thick, soles, heavy. I can't hear you clearly. Izuku said aloud, frustration bleeding into his voice. The voices inside you are quieted, the fire keeper noted. The air here is thick with stagnation. It smothers the spirit. Izuku took a deep breath. Panic won't save anyone. Analyze the situation. Objective 1, survival. Objective 2, information. Objective 3, return home. He looked at the fire keeper. You said your name is the fire keeper? It is my title. I have no name. Okay. Fire keeper. I'm Deku. Or Izuku. Please, just call me Izuku. Ashen One sounds ominous. As you wish, Izuku. Do you know the way out of here? The way back to the fire? She pointed a gloved finger downward. To reach the kiln again, we must ascend. Through the wreckage of the past. The demon prince lies below. Beyond him, the path to the ringed city. And from there, the fire. Descend. Right. Izuku walked to the edge. I can carry you. I have a quirk, an ability, that lets me jump great distances. We can bypass the climbing. He offered his hand. The fire keeper hesitated, then placed her hand in his. Her skin was cold. 1 for all, full cowl. 8%. The green lightning flickered to life. It was jagged, angry. The emerald sparks spat and hissed, reacting to the ash in the air. Hold on tight. Izuku leaped. In his world, this jump would have carried them 100 meters, landing gracefully on a lower platform. Here, as soon as they left the ground, a heaviness grabbed them. It wasn't just gravity, it was a metaphysical weight. The air dragged at them. They dropped like stones. Whoa! Izuku adjusted midair, firing a shot of black whip to snag a gargoyle protruding from a sideways tower. The whip connected, straining. Everything is heavier. Why is everything so heavy? They swung violently, crashing onto a stone balcony covered in moss and rot. Izuku rolled, shielding the fire keeper with his body, skidding to a halt amidst a pile of shattered armor. Physics, Izuku muttered, standing up and dusting himself off, is a suggestion here. The world is tired, the fire keeper said calmly, smoothing her robes. It struggles to hold us up. Izuku looked around. They were in the ruins of what looked like a grand library. Books were scattered everywhere, their pages turned to gray pulp. But it wasn't empty. Movement. In the shadows, Izuku's head snapped to the right. Danger sense spiked. Hello? Izuku called out. Is someone there? We need help. From the gloom, a figure emerged. It was humanoid, draped in rags that might have once been clerical robes. It held a staff topped with a blue flame. Its skin was the color of wet clay, stretched tight over bone. It didn't speak. It raised the staff. A glowing, blue orb of energy coalesced at the tip. Wait! Don't shoot! Izuku raised his hands. I'm a hero! I'm not going to hurt you! The figure let out a gurgling moan. Soul arrow. The blue bolt fired. It moved slower than a bullet, but it crackled with a menacing hum. Izuku dodged effortlessly, the bolt shattering against the stone wall behind him with the sound of breaking glass. He attacked me, Izuku noted. Panic? Confusion? More figures emerged. 3 of them. They were wielding jagged daggers. They shambled forward, their movements jerky and uncoordinated, like puppets with tangled strings. They look sick, Izuku whispered. He saw their faces. Their eyes were gone. Just empty, black sockets leaking a dark fluid. Their mouths hung open in silent screams. They are hollows, the fire keeper said. Merkmen who have risen from the deep. They have lost their minds. They seek only souls. Lost their minds? Izuku gritted his teeth. Then their victims. They need medical attention, not a fight. One of the Merkmen lunged, slashing at Izuku. Smoke screen! Purple smoke exploded from Izuku's gauntlets, filling the balcony. The Merkmen screeched, confused, swinging wildly into the cloud. Black whip! Izuku moved through the smoke like a phantom. He didn't strike to break bones, he struck to restrain. The black tendrils whipped out, wrapping around the Merkmen's torsos and arms. With a precise tug, he slammed them together, binding them tightly against the stone pillar. The smoke cleared. The 3 Merkmen were trussed up, immobilized. There, Izuku said, wiping sweat from his forehead. He smiled nervously at the fire keeper. See? We don't have to fight. We just need to restrain them until we can find someone who can cure them. Maybe Recovery Girl could. He stopped. The Merkmen weren't stopping. Usually, when a villain is restrained, they struggle, then realize it's futile. Or they curse you out. These things were gnawing at the black whip energy. Their teeth cracked and broke, but they kept biting. One of them twisted its arm. Snap. It broke its own elbow to slide out of the binding. It didn't scream. It didn't even flinch. It just kept clawing toward Izuku, dragging its broken limb behind it. Stop! Izuku yelled, horrified. You're hurting yourself. Stop moving! The Merkman lunged, snapping its jaws at Izuku's boot. Why aren't they stopping? Izuku backed away. Pain signals should be triggering a shutdown response. Why don't they care? They are empty, Izuku, the firekeeper said, her voice tinged with a sadness that felt ancient. There is no person left inside. Only the curse. They cannot be saved. They can only be put to rest. Put to rest? Izuku looked at her. You mean killed, released? No. Izuku shook his head furiously. That's not what heroes do. We save people. Even the crazy ones. Even the ones who want to kill us. If I kill them, I'm no better than a villain. He kicked the Merkman away, knocking it back without crushing it. We're leaving. I'm not killing sick people. He grabbed the firekeeper's arm again. Let's go. There has to be a path where we can avoid them. They ran. But as they navigated the twisting corridors of the dreg heap, Izuku's heart sank. The world was infested. Every corner hid a horror. Skeletal dogs. Knights with armor fused to their flesh. Massive, winged angels that rained beams of light that disintegrated stone. Izuku evaded. He dodged. He used smokescreen until his throat burned. He used black whip until his energy reserves ached. He saved the firekeeper a dozen times, deflecting blows, pushing enemies off ledges, which made him feel guilty, and running. But the dreg heap did not care about his morals. It was a meat grinder, the bonfire, 2 hours later. Or maybe 2 days. Time was impossible to track here. The sky never changed. The eclipse hung there, watching them like a bloodshot eye. They found a small cave, sheltered from the wind. Inside, a sword was thrust into a pile of bones and ash. A bonfire. The firekeeper knelt before it, extending her hand. The embers flared to life, casting a warm, orange glow against the cave walls. Izuku collapsed against the wall, sliding down until he hit the dirt. He was panting heavily. Not from physical exertion, One for All gave him stamina for days, but from mental exhaustion. He pulled out a small, charred notebook from his back pouch. It was his hero analysis for the future number 14. It had survived the war, barely. He clicked his pen. It still worked. Observation report, the dreg heap. Atmosphere, high density. Breathable but sulfurous. Enemies, hollows. No higher brain function detected. Immune to pain. High aggression. Fearless. Magic system, souls. He looked up at the firekeeper. She was tending to the fire, her hands weaving through the flames as if they were water. Firekeeper, Izuku said, his voice raspy. Tell me about souls. She turned to him. Souls are the source of all life. They are the disparity found within the flame. Light, dark, life, death. In my world, Izuku said, tapping his chest, we have quirks. Genetic anomalies. Biology. But you said I have a roaring sun inside me. Yes, she nodded. Your power. It is not of the body alone. It is a vessel. A collection of wills. Izuku looked at his hand. One for all. It was a power passed down. Cultivated. Stockpiled. If quirks are biological, Izuku muttered, scratching his pen furiously against the paper, then one for all is just energy. But here, in a world where the spiritual is physical, one for all isn't just energy. It's souls. He realized why he was so strong here. In the Dark Souls universe, power came from the absorption of souls. The more souls you had, the stronger you were. Izuku Midoriya was carrying the souls of 8 predecessors. 8 heroes who had lived, fought, and died with intense will. In this dimension, He wasn't just a kid with a super-strength quirk. He was a walking Lord Soul. A stockpile of humanity so dense it was radiating like a star. That explains the lightning, he whispered. The energy is leaking because the container, my body, is struggling to contain the metaphysical weight of 8 ghosts in a world where ghosts are real. You possess a great burden, the Firekeeper said. But without the will to sever life, that power is useless here. Izuku stiffened. I have the will. I fought wars. You fight to stop. Not to end, she corrected. In this land, there is no prison. There is no rehabilitation. There is only the fire, and the dark. To leave an enemy behind is to leave them to eternal torment. I will find a third way, Izuku insisted, closing his notebook. I always do. The breaking point. They moved on. The path led them to the ruins of an earthen peak. A poisonous windmill collapsed into a swamp. The enemy changed. It was no longer the mindless merkman. It was a knight. He stood on a narrow bridge blocking their path. He was tall, clad in silver armor with a red cape. A Lothric knight. He held a straight sword that hummed with lightning, not unlike Izuku's own. Excuse me, Izuku called out. We just need to pass. The knight didn't roar. He didn't shamble. He stepped forward into a perfect combat stance. The intent radiating from him was razor-sharp. It wasn't the chaotic hunger of a hollow. It was the disciplined muscle memory of a soldier who had died 1,000 times and remembered every parry. He's dangerous, Izuku warned, pushing the Firekeeper behind him. The knight charged. Izuku activated full call 20%. He moved to intercept. Detroit smash. He pulled the punch at the last second, aiming for the knight's chest plate to knock the wind out of him. Clang. The impact shook the bridge. The knight skidded back a few feet, his boots carving grooves in the stone, but he didn't fall. He didn't collapse. Instead, the knight's sword glowed. He lunged with a thrust so fast Izuku barely saw it. Danger sense. Izuku twisted. The blade sliced through his shoulder pad, drawing blood. Fast. Izuku gasped, backflipping away. He's as fast as Gran Torino. The knight pressed the advantage. A flurry of strikes. Overhead. Thrust. Shield bash. Izuku was on the defensive. He blocked with his iron saws, deflected with the backs of his gauntlets. I can't hit him hard, Izuku thought frantically. If I use 100%, I'll kill him. If I use 45%, I might shatter his ribs. I have to knock him out. Manchester smash. Izuku delivered an axe kick to the knight's helmet. The knight staggered, dropping to one knee. Stay down! Izuku yelled. The knight immediately shield bashed Izuku's standing leg. Gah! Izuku fell. The knight raised his sword for a killing blow. Izuku rolled, the blade sparks flying as it hit the stone where his head had been. This wasn't a fight. It was an execution attempt. The knight had no interest in dialogue. No interest in capture. He was a machine of war. Izuku! The Firekeeper cried out. Izuku looked up. While he was distracted by the knight, a second enemy, a thrall small and hood-clad, had dropped from the ceiling behind them. It was wielding a flamberge larger than its body. It was rushing the Firekeeper. She stood there. She didn't have a weapon. She didn't run. She simply accepted it. No! Izuku screamed. He was on the ground. The Lothric knight was standing over him, raising his shield to crush Izuku's skull. If he dealt with the knight, the thrall would kill the keeper. If he went for the thrall, the knight would take his head. Time slowed. Izuku looked at the Firekeeper. He saw the acceptance in her posture. She was ready to die. Again. I can't save everyone, All Might had said once. Shut up, Izuku thought. You can't save a thing that wants to die, Shigaraki had said. Shut up. Izuku made a choice. Not a hero's choice. A survivor's choice. He didn't hold back. He channeled one for all. Not into a punch, but into his legs. Gearshift, overdrive. The world turned into a blur. Izuku exploded from the ground. The shockwave shattered the Lothric knight's shield and sent the armored warrior flying off the bridge, not unconscious, but dead before he hit the fog. Izuku appeared in front of the thrall. The little creature screeched, raising its blade. Izuku didn't think. He didn't calculate angles for a non-lethal takedown. He reacted to the threat to an innocent life. His fist, glowing with the fury of the second user, connected with the thrall's head. There was no smash called out. There was just a wet, sickening crunch. The thrall's head didn't just break, it disintegrated. The body was thrown backward with such force it embedded itself into the stone wall, limp and broken. Silence returned to the bridge. Izuku stood there, his fist extended, steam rising from his gauntlet. Green lightning crackled and faded. He stared at the wall. At the remains of the thrall. It began to dissolve into white smoke, souls, which flowed toward Izuku and absorbed into his chest. It felt cold. It felt like swallowing an ice cube. Izuku. The fire keeper stepped forward. Izuku fell to his knees. He ripped his mask off and dry-heaved. I killed it, he choked out, tears springing to his eyes. I killed him. You saved me, she said, placing a hand on his shoulder. I killed him. Izuku looked at his hands. They were shaking violently. I didn't hold back. I just wanted it to stop. I erased him. In his world, he had fought murderers, psychopaths, and monsters. He had broken his own bones to avoid killing them. He had tried to save Shigaraki, the man who destroyed Japan. But here, in 10 minutes, he had killed. He was not alive, Izuku, the fire keeper said gently. He was a vessel of agony. You gave him peace. It doesn't feel like peace, Izuku whispered, gripping the ash-covered ground. It feels like failure. He looked over the edge of the bridge where the Lothric knight had fallen. Is this what this world is? Izuku asked, his voice hollow. Kill or be killed? No saving? No smiles? This is the world without fire, she answered. It is a world of duty, not dreams. Izuku stayed on his knees for a long time. He felt the souls he had absorbed, the knight and the thrall, settling into the stockpile of one for all. They were faint, tiny sparks compared to the roaring sun of the previous users, but they were there. He wasn't just stockpiling power anymore. He was stockpiling death. I want to go home, Izuku said, wiping his mouth. Then we must reach the fire keeper said. Stand, Ashen One. The path is long. Izuku stood up. He looked different. The wide-eyed panic was gone, replaced by a somber, haunted look. The look of a soldier who realizes the war will not end with a treaty. He checked his gloves. He checked his boots. Okay, he said softly. He didn't smile. Let's go. The realization, as they walked deeper into the ruins, passing the corpses of giants and the rusted remains of legends, Izuku began to mutter. But it wasn't his usual manic fanba muttering. It was cold, hard analysis. Gravity is fluctuating. The sun hasn't moved. Time is stagnant, he whispered. The decay rate of the structures implies centuries, yet the corpses are fresh. This isn't a planet. It's a purgatory. He looked at the sky, at the dark sign bleeding over them. First user, he thought, closing his eyes for a second as they walked. Can you hear me? A faint ripple. Yes. We aren't heroes here, are we? No. Yoichi's voice came back, sad and distant. Here, we are just the fuel. Izuku opened his eyes. He saw a group of harpies perched on a ruin ahead. They were watching him. Izuku didn't call out to them. He didn't ask them to surrender. He clenched his fist, the green lightning shifting to a darker, more intense shade. He would save the fire keeper. He would save this world if he could. But he realized now that saving this world might not mean rescuing it. It might mean putting it out of its misery. The fire crackled, a lonely, rhythmic sound that seemed to be the only heartbeat left in the universe. Izuku Midoriya sat cross-legged before the coiled sword, his hands resting on his knees. He was staring at his gloves. They were stained with ash and dust, but beneath the fabric, he could feel a strange, cold humming in his veins. It had been hours since the incident on the bridge. Since he had killed the thrall. Since he had watched a living thing dissolve into white vapor and flow into his chest. He hadn't spoken since then. He had simply followed the firekeeper to this small, sheltered alcove beneath the crushed remains of an earthen peak windmill. She had tended to the bonfire, her movements graceful and ritualistic, while Izuku wrestled with the sensation of fullness. In his world, one for all was a heavy weight. It felt like carrying a boulder on his back, a responsibility passed down through generations. Here, It felt like he had swallowed a star. The souls of the Lothric knight and the thrall were not just energy. They were memories. Faint, static-filled echoes of sword drills, of loyalty to a prince, of hunger, of madness. They swirled around the massive, central core of One for All, like asteroids caught in the gravity of a black hole. Izuku, the fire keeper's voice broke the silence. She was sitting on the opposite side of the fire, her blind mask reflecting the flames. You must rest. The journey ahead requires spirit, not just strength. Izuku looked up. His eyes were tired, dark circles bruising the skin beneath them. I can't sleep. If I sleep, I feel like I'll wake up and this will all be real. Or worse, I'll wake up and I'll forget who I am. You will not hollow, she assured him gently. You possess too much flame. It's not hollowing I'm afraid of, Izuku whispered. It's changing. He clenched his fist. The green sparks of full call flickered for a second, then died out. I need to talk to them, he said, more to himself than her. I need to understand what this power is doing to me. He closed his eyes. He focused on his breathing. He visualized the deep, dark ocean within his mind where the vestiges of the previous users resided. Usually, he had to swim down to reach them. This time, the ocean was gone, the vestige realm. Izuku opened his eyes in the mental world of One for All. It had changed. Before, this place was a void of shifting mists, where the users sat on stone thrones in a circle, their forms made of multicolored flames. It was a place of legacy, noble and bright despite the shadows. Now it was a ruin. The floor was cracked, made of gray stones similar to the Firelink shrine. The mist was gone, replaced by a creeping, oppressive dark fog that clung to the ground. And the thrones were broken. Nana? Izuku called out, his voice echoing in the vast, empty chamber. He saw the seventh user. Nana Shimura sat on her throne, but she was stone still. Her flame, usually a vibrant yellow-pink, was dim, barely a candle flicker. Her face was buried in her hands. She was weeping, but no sound came out. All Might! Izuku ran toward the indistinct, ghostly figure of Tashinori Yaegi. The vestige of All Might was flickering violently, like a hologram with a bad connection. He was frozen in a pose of triumph, a silent scream of I am here on his lips, but he wasn't moving. He was a statue of light, trapped in a loop. Why aren't they answering? Izuku spun around. The second and third users were facing the wall, their backs to him. The fourth, Haikyuu Shinomori, was curled into a ball on his chair, shaking. Because they are of a world that makes sense. Ninth. The voice was quiet, frail, but clear. Izuku turned to the first user's throne. Yoichi Shigaraki was there. He looked different. His hair was longer, white as bone. His clothes were tattered rags. He looked less like a hero and more like a prisoner. First, Izuku breathed, rushing over. What is happening? Why can't I hear anyone? Why is danger sense screaming constantly? Yoichi looked up. His eyes were bright green, glowing with an intensity that hurt to look at. The laws of physics, the laws of causality, they do not apply here, Izuku, Yoichi said. Our quirks, they were biological functions. Genetic factors. Mutations. He gestured to the ruined room. But here? Biology is a lie. In this reality, the soul is the only truth. And One for All. One for All is not a quirk anymore. Yoichi stood up. He was thin, emaciated, looking very much like the undead Izuku had seen in the dreg heap. My brother, Yoichi whispered, all for one. He took power. He stockpiled it. He was greedy. In this world, that is the nature of the abyss. The dark wants to take. To absorb. He pointed a bony finger at Izuku's chest. But One for All was a power meant to be given. To be cultivated. To grow. I know that, Izuku said desperately. That's why we have to get back. If we stay here, the power is changing, Izuku, Yoichi interrupted. Don't you feel it? You absorbed those souls on the bridge. You didn't just take their energy. You took their burden. Yoichi walked closer, placing a cold hand on Izuku's shoulder. One for All stockpiles power. That is its core function. In our world, that meant physical energy. Kinetic force. Yoichi's eyes widened. But here, Power is soul. You are a stockpiler of souls, Izuku. You are doing what the Lords of Cinder do, but you aren't burning them away to keep a fire lit. You are keeping them. You are accumulating them. Izuku stepped back, horror dawning on him. So, I'm stealing them? Like all for one? No, Yoichi shook his head. You aren't stealing. You are saving them. But the weight, look at them. He gestured to the frozen vestiges. They cannot handle the pressure of this world's despair. The sorrow of the dreg heap is leaking in. They are paralyzed by the sheer entropy of this dimension. Yoichi looked at his own hand. It was trembling. I am the only one who can speak to you, because I was born frail. I was born with nothing but a will to give. That aligns with the fire. But the others, they were warriors. They lived to fight. Here, fighting is just a delay of the inevitable. Their wills are broken, so I'm alone? Izuku asked, his voice breaking. I have to do this alone. You are never alone, Ninth, Yoichi said, though his voice was fading. But you are the driver now. We are just the engine. You must decide what this power is for. Are you a hero? Or are you a lord? I don't want to be a lord, Izuku said firmly. I just want to save people. Yoichi smiled sadly. It was a smile filled with pity. In this world, Izuku, those two things are often enemies. The room began to shake. The darkness crept closer. Wake up, Ninth. The fire needs tending. The kiln of the mind. Izuku gasped, his eyes snapping open. He was back in the cave. The fire keeper was adding a bone shard to the flames. The fire roared briefly, casting long, dancing shadows against the rock. Izuku rubbed his face. He felt heavy. Heavier than before. The conversation with Yoichi hadn't alleviated his fears, it had crystallized them. He wasn't just a traveler. He was a vessel. An anomaly in the Dark Soul's cosmology. Fire Keeper, Izuku said, his voice steady now. He pulled his notebook from his pouch. He needed to analyze. He needed to rationalize the magic, or he would go insane. Yes, Izuku, you said the first flame is dying. That it's starving. It is, she nodded. The fire consumes souls to sustain the age of light. When a powerful soul, a lord, a hero, links the fire, they are consumed. Their power becomes the fuel for the world's existence. Like coal in a furnace, Izuku muttered, scribbling. But coal burns out. That's why you need a new Lord of Cinder every few centuries, right? It's a cycle. Someone gets strong, they burn themselves, the fire lasts a while, then fades, and repeat. Precisely, she said. It is the first sin. The refusal to let the dark come. Izuku tapped his pen against his chin. His green eyes darted back and forth, the gears of his mind turning at a speed that defied the stagnation of the world around him. It's inefficient, he mumbled. The fire keeper tilted her head. Inefficient? It's a closed system with diminishing returns, Izuku said, his voice rising with excitement as he fell into his habit of muttering. The flame burns the soul. The soul is destroyed. The energy is released as time and light. But eventually, the fuel runs out. And every time you link the fire, the world gets a little more broken, right? That's why the dreg heap exists. It's residue from a reaction that's been forced to repeat too many times. He looked at the fire keeper. But one for all, it doesn't burn out. He stood up and began pacing the small cave. One for all stockpiles. It regenerates. It takes the power of one user, cultivates it, makes it stronger, and passes it on. It's a power that grows over time. It creates energy from will. He stopped pacing and looked at the fire. If I used 100% of my power in my world, I would break my bones. But the power would come back. It doesn't disappear. It refills. He looked at his hand. Hypothesis, Izuku said, his heart pounding. If a normal soul is coal, then one for all is a nuclear reactor. The fire keeper stood up slowly. Her expression was unreadable behind the mask, but her posture was tense. What are you suggesting, Ashen One? I'm suggesting that if I link the fire. Izuku swallowed hard. I wouldn't just burn up and die. The fire would try to eat my soul, but my soul regrows power. It creates more energy than it loses. He looked at her, eyes wide. I could be a perpetual engine. I could keep the fire lit, forever. without anyone else ever having to die. Silence. Absolute, heavy silence filled the cave. The fire-keeper took a step back. Her hands trembled slightly. An eternal age of fire? She whispered. A day that never sets? No more sacrifices, Izuku said, stepping toward her. No more undead curse. If the fire is strong enough, the curse breaks, right? People would get their minds back. The hollows, they could be people again. It is unprecedented, she said softly. To sustain the fire eternally, the pain, it would be infinite. You would be burning forever, Izuku. You would be the guardian of a flame that sears the flesh from the bone, eternally regenerating only to burn again. Izuku flinched. He remembered the pain of breaking his arms. The searing agony of Shigaraki's decay. I can take pain, Izuku said quietly. I've been breaking myself since I was 15 to save people. But for eternity? She asked. To never see your home? To never see your friends? Izuku looked down at his notebook. At the scorched edges. He thought of Uraraka's smile. Ida's chopping hand gestures. All Might's I am here. His mother's tears. I want to go home, he admitted, his voice small. More than anything. I want to finish high school. I want to be the #1 hero. He looked up at the eclipse. But being a hero means meddling where you don't belong to save people. If I leave, if I find a way home and leave this world to rot, then I'm not a hero. I'm just a tourist. The fire keeper bowed her head. You have the heart of a king, Izuku. But the path to the kiln is blocked. The demon prince stands below. And beyond him, the ringed city. Only then can we return to the first flame. Then we move, Izuku said, closing the notebook and shoving it into his pouch. We go to the demon prince. I'll prove it. I'll prove that humanity doesn't have to die to survive. The desert sorceress. They descended further. The earthen peak ruins were treacherous. The air grew thick with poison spores. Izuku had to use float to carry the fire keeper over vast lakes of toxic purple sludge, his stamina draining faster than usual due to the heavy atmosphere. They reached a large, open courtyard surrounded by the twisted roots of the great tree that pierced the drag heap. Stop, Izuku whispered, landing silently on a protruding root. Danger sense buzzed. Not a scream, but a warning. Below them, walking among the ruins of a wooden shack, was a woman. She was scantily clad in red silks, wielding a fan. Behind her hovered 2 thralls, waiting like dogs. A desert pyromancer, the fire keeper whispered. Zoe. She is the last of her kind. Is she hostile? She serves the chaos. She will burn anything that approaches. Izuku gritted his teeth. I'm not killing her. I refuse to kill again. He dropped down. Hello? He shouted, hands raised. Zoe spun around. She was beautiful in a fierce, terrified way. Her eyes were wild. She didn't hesitate. She waved her fan. A ball of molten chaos, fire and lava mixed together, materialized and hurled toward him. Whoa! Izuku dodged, the fireball exploding against the root he had just been standing on. The heat was intense, singing his hair. Please! We just want to pass. Izuku pleaded, activating Black Whip. I don't want to fight you. Zoe screamed something in a language Izuku didn't understand, an ancient dialect of the Great Swamp. She waved her fan again. A whip of fire lashed out. She's not listening, Izuku realized. She's scared. She's reacting to fear. He zipped forward, using full call 5%. He ducked under the fire whip. Delaware smash, Air Force. He flicked his fingers. A compressed blast of wind shot out. He aimed for the ground at her feet, intending to knock her off balance. The wind blast hit the rotten wood. The floor collapsed. Ah! Zoe cried out as she fell backward. Got you! Izuku extended Black Whip to catch her. He wasn't going to let her fall. The black tendril wrapped around her wrist. Izuku pulled, anchoring his feet. I've got you! Just stop fighting. Zoe looked up at him. Her eyes widened. For a second, the madness cleared. She saw a boy, glowing with green light, trying to pull her up from a pit of poison. She reached for her fan with her free hand. Don't! Izuku yelled. She swung the fan. A combustion spell exploded in Izuku's face. Gah! Izuku was blinded for a second, the heat searing his skin. His grip on Black Whip loosened instinctively. Zoe fell. No! Izuku dove after her. She hit the poisoned sludge below with a splash. She scrambled up, coughing, covered in the toxic muck. She looked up at Izuku, hatred in her eyes, and prepared another spell. But she didn't see the shadow behind her. A Herald Legion Knight, a bloated, headless monstrosity of the abyss that wandered the swamp, emerged from the sludge. Its massive curved greatsword came down. Squelch. Izuku froze, hanging upside down from a root by his legs. Zoe was gone. Crushed. The Herald Knight groaned, a deep, watery sound, and lumbered away. Izuku pulled himself back up to the platform. He sat there, breathing hard. His face burned from the fire. His heart burned from something else. I tried to save her, Izuku whispered as the fire keeper caught up to him. I had her. She did not want to be saved, Izuku, the fire keeper said. She chose fire over your hand. Why? Izuku slammed his fist into the wood, splintering it. Why does everyone here choose death? Why is it so hard to just exist? Because in this world, the fire keeper said, looking at the spot where Zoe died, existence is pain. To Hollowing, death is a mercy. To the insane, chaos is the only logic. She knelt beside him. You cannot save everyone, Izuku Midoriya. Not here. You must save the world first. Only then can the people be saved. Izuku wiped the soot from his eyes. He looked at the massive hole in the earth ahead of them. A giant, gaping maw leading into the roots of the world. The demon prince lay below. I get it, Izuku said, his voice hardening. The naive hope that he could talk no jutsu his way through dark souls was dying. It was being replaced by resolve. We go down, he said. We defeat the demon. We go to the Ringed City. And then... I decide. The drop. They stood at the edge of the great drop. Below, miles down, was the fire-scarred arena of the demons. This is the point of no return, the fire keeper said. Once we descend, we cannot climb back up to the dreg heap. We will be in the deepest parts of the earth. Izuku tightened his gloves. He checked his support items. He had half a roll of capture tape left. His iron saws were cracked. His costume was more gray than green now. He felt the souls swirling inside him. The knight. The thrall. And now, the residue of Zoe's death, which drifted up from the swamp like glitter. He absorbed it all. He stockpiled it. Fire Keeper, Izuku said. Yes? When we get to the kiln, if I do this. If I become the guardian. He looked at her. Will you stay with me? The Fire Keeper paused. She turned her head toward him. A faint smile touched her lips beneath the mask. I am bound to the fire, Izuku. If you become the fire, then I am bound to you. For as long as you burn. That sounds lonely, Izuku said. But at least I won't be alone. He picked her up, cradling her in his arms bridal style. She was light, like a bird. Hold on, he said. One for all, full cowl. 30%. The lightning crackled. It was brighter now. The green was mixing with streaks of gold and white, the color of souls. Let's go save the world. Izuku leaped. They fell into the dark, the wind roaring in their ears, descending toward the chaos of the demons. And for the first time since arriving, Izuku didn't feel like a victim of circumstance. He felt like a meteorite. A falling star coming to smash the darkness. The descent into the crater of the Demon Prince was not a fall. It was a plunge into history's furnace. Wind roared past Izuku's ears, tearing at his mask and whipping the Fire Keeper's robes into a frenzy. They were dropping into the hollowed-out stump of a gigantic archtree, the very foundation of the world that had existed before the Age of Fire. Prepare yourself, Izuku. The Fire Keeper's voice was calm, barely audible over the rushing air. Below lies the chaos of the old world. The last of the demons. I see them! Izuku shouted, narrowing his eyes against the updraft of ash and heat. Far below, in a vast arena of soot and bone, two shapes writhed. They were gargantuan, bat-like monstrosities wreathed in flame and poison. One burned with a dull, angry orange. The other glowed with a toxic violet. The demon in pain. The demon from below. Izuku twisted his body in midair, cradling the Fire Keeper against his chest with one arm while charging his legs with the other. One for all, full cow. 45%. The green lightning screamed, illuminating the dark shaft. Smash! Izuku kicked the air, the pressure waves slowing their descent just enough to turn a fatal impact into a controlled landing. They hit the ash with a heavy thud, dust billowing up in a gray mushroom cloud. The moment they touched down, the world screamed. The demon in pain, sensing the fresh souls, lunged. It moved with terrifying speed for something so large, clawing across the ground like a feral dog. Its maw opened, spewing a stream of liquid fire. Move! Izuku shoved the fire keeper behind a jutting rock formation and leaped forward. Danger sense didn't just buzz. It vibrated his entire skull. The heat was intense, singeing the edges of his costume. Black whip! Tendrils of black energy shot from Izuku's shoulders, latching onto the demon's horns. He yanked, pivoting his hips to redirect the monster's momentum. Get back! He slammed the demon sideways, but it didn't crumple. Its skin was like volcanic rock. The impact jarred Izuku's bones, hard. Izuku analyzed instantly, backflipping away as the second demon, the demon from below, vomited a cloud of toxic purple gas. Their durability is insane. Physical trauma works, but I have to hit harder than I would against a Noma. And the gas. Hold your breath. The battle was a chaotic dance. Izuku was a speck of green light bouncing between two mountains of fire. He used float to stay airborne, avoiding the lava pools, weaving in and out of the demon's claws. Manchester smash! His heel connected with the demon in pain's skull. There was a crack, like stones splitting, and the beast roared, staggering. But then, the second demon struck. A massive claw swiped Izuku out of the air. Gah! Izuku crashed into the wall of the arena, spitting blood. His ribs groaned. No time to rest. Danger senses pointing. Up! He looked up. The demon in pain was glowing bright red. It wasn't just fire. It was a laser. A concentrated beam of chaos energy. It's a ranged attack. Izuku kicked off the wall, the beam scorching the rock where his head had been a microsecond before. For 20 minutes, the battle raged. Izuku fought with a desperation fueled by the knowledge that the fire keeper was defenseless nearby. He systematically broke them down, using FA gene to build up kinetic energy for devastating strikes that shattered their rocky hides. Finally, with a dual Detroit smash, he crushed the skulls of both demons simultaneously. Silence fell over the arena. The demons dissolved into ash, leaving behind only silence and smoke. Is it over? Izuku panted, his hands on his knees. Steam rose from his body. Not yet, the fire keeper warned, stepping out from her cover. From the corpse of the demon in pain, a new light emerged. The ashes swirled, coalescing. The fire turned a deep blood red. The demon prince was born. It didn't scream. It stood up, massive and winged, pulsing with the last true chaos flame of the world. Oh, come on, Izuku groaned. A second phase? Really? The prince raised a hand. A massive orb of fire, resembling a miniature sun, formed above its head. It began to rain meteors. Izuku! The chaos flame. The fire keeper pointed. It is magic. You cannot block it. Magic, Izuku gritted his teeth. Right. Physics don't apply. He couldn't punch a fireball the size of a house. He had to close the distance. Gear shift, overdrive. The world slowed. Izuku became a blur. He dodged the meteors, zigzagging through the Hell's Cape. He reached the demon prince's chest. This is for the world. He didn't hold back. He unleashed the stockpile. The souls of the Lothric Knight, the Thrall, Zoe, and the Vestiges all roared in unison. United States of Smash. The punch connected with the prince's chest core. The explosion of wind and light blew the ash out of the crater, creating a vacuum. The demon prince didn't just break, it shattered. The chaos flame was snuffed out by the sheer, overwhelming force of One for All. The giant crumbled. A massive, heavy soul, burning with intense heat, flowed into Izuku. He fell to his back, gasping. The soul felt like swallowing a mouthful of lava, but then it settled, adding a dense, fiery weight to his core. We did it, he whispered. The city of gods. Transport came in the form of white, winged demons. They were grotesque, leathery creatures, but they bore a strange, subservient grace. They carried Izuku and the fire keeper up from the pit, through the clouds, and over a massive stone wall. When they broke through the cloud layer, Izuku's eyes widened. It was beautiful. Unlike the gray rot of the dreg heap, or the fiery ruin of the kiln, this place was green. Lush grass covered the ground. White flowers bloomed in abundance. Majestic spires and domes of white stone rose against the sky. It looked like a paradise. But then Izuku saw the sky. The dark sign, the bleeding eclipse, was still there. And the city was slanting. It was slowly, imperceptibly sliding down into the abyss at the world's edge. The ringed city, the fire keeper announced as the demons set them down on a high staircase. The gift of the gods to the pygmies. And their cage. Cage? Izuku dusted off his costume, which was now stained with demon soot. The pygmies are the ancestors of humanity, she explained. They possess the dark soul. The gods feared this power, so they built this city at the end of the world to contain them. To keep the dark isolated. Izuku looked at the glittering towers. They locked them away because they were afraid of their power? Yes. They gave them a beautiful prison and a sleeping princess to guard the lie. Izuku clenched his fist. Quirk containment, he muttered. It's the same story. People fearing what they don't understand, pushing it to the margins until it rots. He looked out over the city. It felt silent. Too silent. We need to find the Church of Filianor, the firekeeper said. Only by waking the princess can we reach the true kiln. Let's go, Izuku said. He took a step forward. Bzzzt. Danger sense pricked the back of his neck. Not a warning of an attack, but a warning of presence. Izuku froze. He looked around. The wind rustled the grass. The flowers swayed. What is it? The firekeeper asked. I feel. Izuku rubbed his temples. I feel something familiar. Something cold. It felt like the presence he had felt in the war. The sensation of a void that sucked in everything around it. All for one. Shigaraki, Izuku whispered. He's here. The deep, miles below the pristine streets of the ringed city, in the abyssal swamp that served as the city's sewer and foundation, a hand broke the surface of the black water. Tamura Shigaraki, or rather, the entity that was now a fusion of Shigaraki and the vestige of All for One, dragged himself onto a patch of mossy earth. His body was changing. The fall through the reality tear had stripped away much of his physical stability. His hyper-regeneration quirk was working overtime, but it was fueled by a different energy source now. The abyss. Shigaraki looked at his hand. The skin was pale, almost translucent gray. Black veins pulsed beneath the surface. Interesting, the voice of All for One echoed in his mind, overlapping with Shigaraki's own thoughts. The quirks, they are dormant. Starved. This world lacks the biological factors to sustain them. Shigaraki clenched his hand. Dust did not crumble. The decay quirk was sluggish. But Shigaraki rasped, looking at the black water, there is something else. He dipped his hand into the swamp. He didn't feel water. He felt humanity, millions of sunken souls. The dregs of mankind that had pooled here for eons. They were heavy, sticky, and filled with a familiar emotion, want. It's just like me, Shigaraki grinned, the skin around his mouth cracking. It wants to destroy. It wants to consume. A shape rose from the water nearby. It was a Herald Legion knight, a massive suit of armor with a dark, gaping void where a head should be. It swung a curved great sword, sensing the intruder. Shigaraki didn't dodge. He didn't need to. He reached out. All for one, he commanded. In the MHA world, his quirk stole genetic factors. Here, the concept of stealing power translated perfectly into the metaphysics of the abyss. His hand touched the knight's armor. He didn't steal a quirk. He stole the dark. The Herald Knight shrieked, a sound like grinding metal, as streams of black viscous energy were ripped from its form. The armor collapsed, empty and rusted, into the water. The energy flowed into Shigaraki. His muscles bulged. The black veins on his skin thickened. His white hair grew longer, floating as if underwater. Power, Shigaraki laughed. Pure, unadulterated power. No complex genetic sequences. Just raw desire. He looked deeper into the swamp. He saw hundreds of glowing red eyes. Locust preachers. Ring knights corrupted by the dark. You there? Shigaraki pointed at a wandering ring knight. Kneel. The knight hesitated, then bowed. The abyss recognized its king. This world is broken, Shigaraki murmured, feeling the connection to the void expand. Izuku, you're trying to fix a corpse. I'm going to turn it into a puppet. He looked at his other hand. He focused. The stolen darkness swirled, condensing. Let's see what I can make with this. The Judicator, Izuku and the Fire Keeper navigated the upper streets of the ringed city. The beauty was deceptive. The citizens were giant, gray-skinned hollows who ignored them, lost in prayer. But the defenses were active. They reached a long, flower-covered bridge. Stop, Izuku hissed, pulling the Fire Keeper behind a pillar. At the far end of the bridge sat a giant. He was seated on a throne, wearing ceremonial robes. A Judicator giant. He guards the path, the Fire Keeper whispered. He summons the past to defend the present. The giant raised his hand. He let out a roar that sounded like a horn blast. Suddenly, the air above the bridge shimmered. Dozens of spectral figures appeared. Archers. Silver knights of a bygone age. They drew their great bows. Incoming. Izuku grabbed the Fire Keeper and dove. Teach-om, teach-om, teach-om. The arrows were not normal arrows. They were lances of lightning and light. They slammed into the stone where they had been standing, blowing craters into the bridge. Ghost archers? Izuku analyzed rapidly, peeking out. They're intangible, but their attacks are physical. The summoner is the anchor. The spectral archers vanished, only to be replaced by spectral warriors wielding hammers. We can't fight an army of ghosts, Izuku said. I have to take out the giant. He is protected by the magic of the city, the Fire Keeper warned. I'll be fast. Izuku took a breath. Smoke screen. Purple smoke billowed out from his gauntlets, rolling across the bridge. It covered the flowers, obscuring the giant's vision. The giant roared in confusion, slamming his fists blindly onto the bridge. Izuku moved. Full call 20%. He stayed low, skating across the stone using the smoke as cover. He dodged a spectral hammer that swung out of the mist, the wind of it ruffling his hair. He reached the giant's feet. Sorry about this. Izuku leaped, spinning in the air. St. Louis smash! His iron-soled boot slammed into the giant's ankle. Bone cracked. The giant howled and toppled forward. Izuku didn't let up. He vaulted onto the giant's knee, ran up his chest, and delivered a precision strike to the side of the neck. The giant collapsed, unconscious, or dead, Izuku couldn't tell, and he tried not to think about it. The spectral warriors vanished instantly. Clear! Izuku shouted, waving the smoke away. The Fire Keeper hurried across the bridge. You are adapting, Izuku. You fight like a shadow now. I don't have a choice, Izuku said, hopping down. Direct confrontation here takes too much energy. I have to be efficient. He looked at his hand. The glove was torn. His skin was scraped. We're getting close, aren't we? The swamp lies ahead, she said. And past it, the church, the abyssal echo. They descended a massive staircase into the lower level of the city. Here, the beautiful white stone gave way to muck. The pristine architecture sank into a black, oily swamp that stretched as far as the eye could see. The abyss swamp. The smell was atrocious. Rot, decay, and sulfur. Stay on the roots, Izuku instructed, eyeing the black water. That water looks hungry. They moved carefully along the submerged roots of giant trees. Locust preachers, small, insect-like men, chattered from the shadows, speaking of feasting in the dark. Izuku ignored them, focusing on the path. Suddenly danger sense screamed. It was sharp. Immediate. Get down! Izuku tackled the Fire Keeper, pushing her off the route and onto a small island of dry land. A wave of black energy slashed through the air where they had been standing, slicing the thick tree root in half like it was butter. Izuku rolled to his feet, placing himself between the Fire Keeper and the attacker. Who's there? From the shadows of a sunken cathedral, a figure emerged. It was a knight. But not a ring knight. It was a black knight, the dragon slayers of old. But its armor was warped. The charred black metal was weeping a dark, viscous sludge. Its helmet was cracked, revealing a glowing red light within, and it was holding a sword that Izuku recognized. It wasn't a medieval greatsword. It was a mass of flesh and metal fused together. A blade made of quirks. No way. Izuku breathed. The knight didn't speak with a mouth. The voice resonated from the armor itself. It was a voice that made Izuku's blood turn to ice. My. You really are persistent, little brother. Izuku froze. All for one? The knight chuckled, a grinding, metallic sound. In a manner of speaking. The boy Tamura is busy renovating the basement. He found this empty vessel. A suit of armor with no mind, only instinct. He thought it would be a suitable greeting card. The abyssal black knight raised its sword. The air around it warped. Dark purple electricity crackled along the blade. This world is fascinating, Midoriya, AFO's voice continued. No quirks. No all might. Just power, raw and unfiltered. It's a buffet. Where is Shigaraki? Izuku demanded, sparks of one for all flaring around him. What have you done to him? Tamura is evolving. He is becoming the Lord of Hollows. And I? I am simply the will that guides him. The knight took a step forward. The pressure was immense. It wasn't just physical strength, it was magical density. Give up, Izuku Midoriya. Your fire is flickering. The abyss is rising. Why fight it? Just let the water take you. I won't let you destroy another world. Izuku shouted. Black Whip! He fired the tendrils. They wrapped around the knight's sword arm. Smash! Izuku pulled, intending to disarm the puppet. But the knight didn't budge. It stood like a statue rooted to the earth. Is that all? The knight simply yanked its arm back. Izuku was pulled off his feet. He flew through the air toward the knight. The knight's free hand, wreathed in a dark chaotic flame, grabbed Izuku by the throat midair. Grab attack. G-U-H. Izuku choked. The hand wasn't just squeezing, it was burning. The dark fire bypassed his durability, searing directly into his stamina. He felt cold and hot at the same time. Weak, the knight sneered. You rely on your body. But here, the mind rules. It slammed Izuku into the mud. Splash. Izuku coughed, tasting the fall water. He scrambled back as the knight raised its sword for a vertical cleave. Danger sense. Izuku rolled. The sword struck the mud, creating a shockwave of black liquid that knocked him backward. He's strong, Izuku thought, panic rising. Physically, he's on par with the Heian Nomu. But that magic, every time he touches me, I feel weaker. He's draining my souls. Fire Keeper! Run! Izuku yelled. I will not leave you! She cried from the island. Great, Izuku muttered. No retreat. He stood up. The mud sucked at his boots. One for all, 45%. He took a breath. Gene load. He began to bounce on the balls of his feet, building up kinetic charge. The Black Knight charged, moving with terrifying speed for a heavy armor user. It swung the great sword in a horizontal arc. Izuku ducked under the blade. Black Whip, Froppy style. He shot a tendril at a hanging branch above, pulling himself into the air. He was above the knight now. Smoke. He released a cloud of smoke screen directly onto the knight. Cheap tricks, AFO mocked. The knight swung its sword upward, clearing the smoke with a gust of wind pressure. But Izuku wasn't there. He was behind the knight. Gear shift, low gear. He touched the knight's back. The armor rattled. Inertia, controlled. Izuku grabbed the knight's cape. Gear shift, top gear. He pulled. The sudden shift in inertia launched the heavy knight backward, throwing it off balance. It stumbled. Now! Gene release. Izuku channeled all the built-up kinetic energy into his right leg. Manchester. Smash! His leg came down like a guillotine on the knight's helmet. Crunch! The helmet crumpled. The red light inside flickered. The knight hit the mud face first, the force of the blow creating a crater that pushed the swamp water back for 20 meters. Izuku landed, panting. Did I get him? The knight lay still for a moment. Then, a dark laughter bubbled up from the mud. Impressive. The knight pushed itself up. Its head was caved in, but it didn't seem to care. Dark sludge oozed from the cracks in the armor, repairing the metal like organic tissue. But you forget, Izuku. This is just a suit of armor. You cannot kill what is already dead. The knight raised its hand. 5 orbs of black darkness formed above it. Affinity. Die, the orbs fired. They were homing missiles of pure humanity. Izuku couldn't dodge them all. He crossed his arms in an X block. Boom. 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 The impact was like being hit by cannonballs made of depression. Izuku was thrown backward, skipping across the water like a stone. He crashed onto the dry land near the firekeeper. Izuku! She knelt beside him, her hands glowing with a faint healing light. A miracle, Izuku groaned. His arms were smoking. The costume was burned away, revealing skin that looked bruised and necrotic. It hurts, he hissed through gritted teeth. It feels like decay, but colder. The Black Knight began to wade toward them, slow and inevitable. Tamura is waiting for you at the church, Afo said. Bring the firekeeper. We need her eyes. The knight stopped. It seemed the connection was fading, or perhaps Afo had grown bored. Don't keep us waiting, hero. The knight suddenly collapsed. The dark energy left it, and it became just a pile of scrap metal in the mud. The resolution. Silence returned to the swamp. Izuku lay on the ground, letting the firekeeper's miracle soothe the burning in his arms. The golden light felt warm, chasing away the chill of the abyss. He's using puppets, Izuku whispered. He's everywhere. The abyss has accepted him, the firekeeper said, her voice trembling slightly. He has become a father of the deep. Izuku sat up slowly. He looked at his arms. The bruises were fading, thanks to One for All's durability and the healing, but the psychological scar remained. He said he wants your eyes, Izuku said, looking at her mask. Why? The eyes of a firekeeper can see the world without fire, she explained. They can see the betrayal. If he possesses them, he can extinguish the first flame permanently. He can usher in an age of dark that serves only him. Izuku stood up. He stumbled slightly, then steadied himself. He looked toward the distant outline of a massive church rising from the swamp. The Church of Philionor. He's not going to touch you, Izuku said. The doubt from earlier, the fear of the Black Knight, was gone. It was replaced by a cold, hard anger. I'm done playing by this world's rules, Izuku said. He reached into his pouch and pulled out his notebook. He stared at the cover, charred and worn. Yoichi said I'm a stockpiler of souls, Izuku muttered. If Shigaraki wants to use the abyss, then I'll use the fire. He turned to the firekeeper. Teach me, he said. Teach you? Teach me how to use the souls. Not just stockpile them. Use them. Like a spell. Like a miracle. The firekeeper hesitated. That is forbidden for one who is not a cleric or a sorcerer. I'm neither, Izuku said, green lightning sparking in his eyes. I'm a hero. And I need more than punches to beat him. He looked at the pile of armor that was once the Black Knight. We have to move. Shigaraki is waiting. And I'm going to smash that waiting room to pieces. He offered his hand to her. Let's go wake a princess.